Hi guys, I'm Rahul and welcome to my video on birds and flight photography. In this video, I'm going to show what I know of BA photography, and it's aimed at beginner birders who are looking to practice in an urban environment. We do not need to go to forests or parks to get started and to practice birds in flight. You can go to the terrace or the roof of your apartment or your house and you can practice on what common birds you see here. Hopefully with this video you'll be able to get good shots when you finally do get to go to your nearby parks or nearby wildlife sanctuaries. Let's get started. In this video, we'll be covering some important topics like identifying the birds and understanding their behavior, how to position yourself so that you get a good shot, holding the camera so that you can shoot steadily without fatiguing yourself, camera settings that you need to have, practicing tracking and focusing the birds, capturing the images, and finally some extra tips and tricks so that you can get ahead. If you're living in Indian cities like I am, you have a staple of birds to practice with: the black kite, the pigeons, the parakeets, mynas, and the crows. These birds are fairly common and you can easily get close to them without them being scared of you. They have the added benefit of also being of different levels of difficulty when photographing them. The black kite I would rate is the easiest to photograph because they have a very smooth flight pattern where they do not accelerate suddenly or turn much. They prefer to spiral around heat waves and stay at a constant location. On the downside, they usually stay pretty far away from you, so you'll have difficulty getting some details. The next step I would say is the pigeons. They are quite easy to get close to since they are comfortable around humans and they are perfect candidates for learning takeoff and landing shots. In this video, we'll be mostly focusing on the black kites and the pigeons, and we will demonstrate how much you can practice and learn just with these two species. When you get started, I recommend you come up to the roof for a couple of hours and try to understand the birds' flight patterns and behavior, where they like to perch, what part of the sky they like to fly in, and such. This will help you find a good location to stand and start capturing the images. This brings us to the second part: positioning yourself. When you're trying for birds in flight photography and bird photography in general, the light and the angle of light is very important. There are two main considerations here. One, you need to make sure that you have a clear view of the sky and where the birds fly. If you are in a congested area with a lot of buildings, you need to make sure that you are in a place where you have a clear view of the sky and birds do fly there. The second is the sun. You have to make sure that the sun is at your back, or at least at your sides. If the sun is right in front of you, you won't be able to get good images, and what you will end up is silhouettes. So position yourself well so that you can overcome that.
Here, a neighbor had set up a bird feeder which provided amazing opportunities to shoot the parakeets.
Another thing you need to keep in mind when you come for birding is the time. You need to make sure that you come at a time when the light is soft and the birds are active. I found that 2 hours in the morning just after sunrise and 2 hours in the evening just before sunset are the best times you can find.
If you are unsure of what birds are around you, you can try eBird. It has details of what birds were seen recently near you and also some historical data for the previous months and years. There is also an app called Merlin which helps you with images and sounds of those birds for better identification.
Depending on the camera and lens that you're using, you have two options on holding your camera. One, you can set it up on a tripod, or two, like me, you can hand hold the lens. Setting it up on the tripod has the advantage of being very stable and you have a very smooth axis of movement. But it comes with the disadvantage of being not mobile and you will have to carry around a very heavy piece of gear. Hand holding has the advantage of being very mobile. You can move wherever you want and change subjects quite easily. But you need to be very stable when holding. This is a skill I recommend practicing. What you need to do is when you're bringing the camera up to your eye, You need to make sure that your elbows are tucked close to your body and that you're resting the weight of the camera on your body and not holding it entirely on your hands or shoulders, like this. This movement is something that I recommend you practice multiple times so that you are comfortable with it. One technique I found very useful when doing bird photography and birds in flight photography is knowing how to bring the camera quickly up to my eye without losing focus of the bird with my eyes. What I need to do is make sure that I am locked onto the bird with my bare eyes and bring the camera to my eye so that the viewfinder is looking exactly where my eyes were. Here what happens is that I don't lose track of the bird and I don't need to go searching for it with the lens, which is quite difficult when you have this magnification factor. I'd recommend that you practice this multiple times in your house with some small subject that you set up at a distance, and then you take your camera and aim at it multiple times from multiple angles so that you get a good and fast focus on it. Once you can do it consistently in around 1 to 2 seconds, you're ready to take it to the birds. Before we go any further, there are a few settings you need to have configured properly in your camera. Full auto mode will not help you much here, and you will need manual control over at least the shutter speed and the aperture. Shutter speed you need somewhere between 1600th of a second to 3200th of a second depending on what bird you're photographing. Larger birds usually fly slow and you need up to 1600th of a second to get good steady shots. For smaller birds, their wing beats are much faster and you need upwards of 3200th of a second. The aperture is quite easy. You need to set it as wide open as possible on your camera, which is probably around 5.6 for most telephoto lenses or even up to 7.1 for lenses like the RF 100-500. The ISO settings you can leave at auto mode with an upper limit based on what your camera can safely handle. If you are using one of the older DSLRs, it can safely handle upwards of 1000 to 2000 ISO, and if you're using newer mirrorless cameras, they can handle much higher ISOs of up to 12,800 or even more. There are two settings that are essential if you want to shoot birds in flight photography. One is have a high burst rate or FPS. Here what will happen is your camera will take multiple shots whenever you press the trigger. It will give you a higher chance of capturing an interesting action or having the bird in focus and in the frame. Second, you need to be shooting in RAW format and not JPEG. If you under or overexpose the bird a little bit, RAW format will help you recover that in post-production. The autofocus tracking is mostly based on what your camera can handle. If you're using a higher end camera with good animal autofocus tracking, you can safely set it to the tracking mode and leave it as it is. If you have an older camera or a lower end camera which does not have a very good autofocus tracking mechanism, you set it to zone autofocus and set that little box somewhere in the middle, and when you are tracking the bird, you try to keep it within that little box so that you can focus on it constantly. Before you can start capturing photos, you need to understand how to track and focus on the bird. Depending on the bird that you are shooting, it can either be very unpredictable flight path or it would be accelerating very quickly. What you need to do is try to find the bird that you want to shoot in your viewfinder and keep locked on it and keep focusing on it for up to 10 seconds. The more you can keep the bird in focus, the higher your chances of getting a good shot. A technique that I found that helps here is called pre-focusing. In pre-focusing, what you do is try to focus the lens on a subject or any object in a distance that is similar to where you expect the bird to appear from. What happens here is that the lens has a shorter distance to focus to when it moves from your stationary pre-focusing subject to the bird. This will make the autofocus much quicker and it will increase your chances of getting good shots. When you are framing the image, make sure that you have enough space left in the frame so that you can cover the bird when it starts flying. Usually you leave the space right in front of the bird or in the direction it is looking at. Finally, we are ready to start shooting images. For the best results, you need to be able to shoot at a high rate so that you can get multiple shots of the same action and hopefully one or two of them will be clear and have a good image in them. What you need to remember is that your camera has a limited buffer, that is the amount of photos that it can store at a fast pace, and you need to always keep shooting within that buffer. So when you see any good action that you want, track your bird, and when you get to the action, start shooting a long burst and release, relax your arms, observe the birds for a while more, and then repeat. What happens here is that you have a higher chances of getting good shots while at the same time not fatiguing your arms, so that you're able to capture more images for a longer duration. Takeoffs and landings are some of the most difficult shots as well as the most popular. Undoubtedly, they are gorgeous, but to get a good shot, you need to know how these birds behave. Some tips that we use here are like, birds like to poo a little before they take off. This lightens their load a little bit and helps them fly, maybe, who knows. Some birds like the parakeets and mynas also like to call quite loudly before they take off. It will give you a second or two of time to focus and get ready before they actually fly. When it comes to birds that like to go around in large groups like parakeets, munias and such, it gets even easier. When one bird takes off, the others usually follow along in another 2 or 3 seconds. So this gives you a few seconds of warning where you can set yourself up to get a good shot. If you're using with ISO on auto mode, I'd recommend that you check your metering mode also. I'd recommend evaluative metering for a good result. I'd also recommend that you have your exposure compensation dial in a reachable position so that you can increase or decrease the brightness depending on the framing. A much debated topic in bird photography or birds in flight photography is whether to leave the image stabilization on or off. What happens when we leave image stabilization on is that the lens or the camera tries to hold the frame in a particular location while we are moving it. This will make the image a little jerky and you won't be able to focus properly. But I recommend that you leave it on, because what you see through the viewfinder is what the sensor sees, and what the sensor sees is what it's able to focus on. If you have a smooth image for the sensor to focus on, you'll be able to hold the focus on the bird much better. The last tip I have for you today is to keep your ears open. Most times I find birds that I like to shoot, or any birds that come in towards me, by listening to their calls. Most times you will be able to hear them long before you see them, and that helps you look where they are coming from and get ready to shoot them. That's all I have for you today. I hope this video helps you in your photography journey and you learn something new from it. If you have any topics you'd like me to make videos on next, do let me know in the comments and I will try next time. Until then, have a good day and happy birding.